There were a lot of movies that when I was a kid, I loved more than anything. They gave me nightmares. But I loved them more than anything. But I think the movie to top them all, both in nightmares and in my love for the film, is The NeverEnding Story. Yeah, we're going to review this movie. What did you think? Let's talk about it in the comments. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler talk for The NeverEnding Story. Before I dive in, real quick, gotta say a huge thank you to Angela Maxwell. She is a brand new patron of mine on Patreon. So thank you so much, Angela, for jumping on board and becoming a new patron for Durbania. It means so much to me that you took that extra step to be a part of Durbania financially that way. And if you're curious about my Patreon and the different levels of rewards I have for different levels of giving, you can check out the link to my Patreon in the description below. So thank you so much, Angela Maxwell. So, The NeverEnding Story. Last week, I was sick as a dog, and it was just absolutely kicking my butt. And there's only so much you could do watching all the same reruns of The Office and Parks and Rec and other shows like that over and over again before you're just so sick of that. And so finally, I'm just scrolling through Hulu, and there's The NeverEnding Story. And there's my wife sitting next to me who has never seen The NeverEnding Story. So, of course, you know, that was it. We hit play, we watched The NeverEnding Story, and I think it was the first time I've watched it as an adult. And as soon as I saw those green eyes of the Gamork, the nightmares I had as a child and the things that freaked me out came back just like that, and I was so freaking excited, man! I was so excited to dive back into a movie that was so familiar to me as a kid. I used to watch this movie, I kid you not, probably every day. But what was interesting was how much faster it moved for me as a grown-up than it did as a kid. It's like I remember it taking longer to get to things and for things to happen as a kid, being fascinated the whole way through, and as a grown-up going, what? Wait, we're already in the swamp of sadness? Oh no, we're already in the swamp of sadness? So it's kind of interesting to me to kind of compare between when I was a kid and when I was an adult. And it's interesting because the first thing as a kid is the storyline is very, very simple. It's basically this land called Fantasia, which is populated by creatures made up of human fantasy. The land is being threatened by the Nothing. And the Nothing is like the most menacing thing you could ever imagine because it leaves nothing.
It's the emptiness that's left. It is like a despair, destroying this world.
And if you really let that thought sink in, that's really quite terrifying. So the Nothing is a product of human beings losing hope and losing that spark of imagination. And so it's threatening the land of Fantasia. But then it's kind of interesting to watch it as an adult and take it that layer deeper. For instance, as I'm watching it as a grown-up, the biggest thing that I took that layer deeper was at the very end where they're talking about they need Bastion to call out the Empress's new name and how Bastion's been with you, Atreyu, all along. And I'm thinking, he's been there all along? My gosh, why couldn't you have told him so much earlier that you're a book and the human child's reading the book? Call out the human child's name so the human child will call out the Empress's name. Boom, efficient. This is done. But you see, it's not about efficiency, it's about belief. And Bastion needed to go on the hero's journey as much as Atreyu needed to go on the hero's journey. Which is why Atreyu was sent on a quest that as an adult I was watching, I was like, wait, he's literally sent out, like, before he even knows the Empress needs a new name and things like that, they don't know the cure. So he's literally just sent out to the land with no clues and no help. In fact, he's even told, leave your weapons behind. Why? Kid's gotta eat. Let him take his bow and arrow and kill some deer. Are you freaking kidding me? But leave the weapons behind and go out into the land on this aimless quest. And I'm like, what is the purpose of this? Now I get the purpose of it. The purpose is for Bastion to discover his courage. The purpose is for Bastion to discover that he is a warrior just like Atreyu. When Atreyu reaches that mirror to look in the reflection where he can see his true self, he looks in there and he sees Bastian looking back at him, which freaks out Bastian, and he throws the book. And you know what? If I was Bastian reading a book that kept referencing me as I'm reading it, yeah, I'd probably pick up that book and throw that book as well. But here he is reading this book and he's seeing himself. So really it's Bastian looking into that mirror, and it's Bastian seeing Atreyu, this warrior. Bastian is that warrior. And it was for Bastian to discover that, for that to awaken in him, and let that spark of hope burn brightly in his heart. And once he has that hope burning in his heart, and he sees himself as that warrior, and he believes, only then is he able to call out his mother's name as the new name of the Empress to cure her disease. Only then is he able to go in there and make the wishes that bring the land back, because his wishes are his imagination, his hope, his ability to stand firm and believe. That's what brings the land back. And so as you dive into it as an adult, it just goes that much deeper. And it'll still give you nightmares. An image that I've never been able to get out of my mind is Atreyu's horse dying in the swamp of sadness. I have never been able to wipe that out. And what's firmly in my mind is when the horse is like all into the swamp, just his head is above the water, and Atreyu is just pulling on the reins, and you see the horse's teeth as he's kind of pulling back. Like, that image has been burned in my head ever since I was a child. But then as a grown-up watching that scene, there's an extra layer of sadness added on, because it's the swamp of sadness. Now, I always knew that, so if you let the sadness overtake you, you'll sink. None of that was unfamiliar to me, but for some reason it never dawned on me that the horse was that sad that it sank, which then takes that and makes that so much sadder, because, you know, the horse just stops moving and Trey's like, oh, come on. Oh, I get it. Yeah, this is just too tough for you, isn't it? And then it starts sinking? That makes me think that the horse stopped because this was too hard, and it was sad because this was too hard. But then to hear its master affirm those words, suddenly the sadness overtook it, and it began to sink rapidly into the swamp. That thought hit me like a ton of bricks, and it made it so infinitely sadder to watch his horse die. Are you kidding me?
I understand. It's too difficult for you. Artax, you're sinking! Come on!
And then Morla. Oh, the turtle. I will never forget the sneezing turtle and his awkward crossing eyes. Is one of my favorite characters and also sources of nightmares, I think. I mean, how can you look at that turtle's face as a kid and not have weird dreams about it with that crazy, weird, sneezing, cross-eyed face stuck in your brain? But what drove me nuts watching it as a grown-up is here he is, the wise one who's supposed to have all these answers, and he doesn't care. He doesn't care about anything. And because he doesn't care and he's allergic to youth, he can't even, like, get his words out. It takes... Like, they don't have any time, and it takes Atreyu, like, tricking this guy, saying, if you really don't care, then you should not care enough to tell me, how can I save the Empress and stop the nothing? And finally, he says, go and see the oracles, and it's like, oh, finally! Gosh, you stinking turtle! I used to have a turtle. They really do stink. I cannot imagine what a turtle of that size would actually smell like, and it's sneezing on you. But who doesn't love Falkor, the luck dragon? As soon as this guy shows up and Atreyu is riding this dragon, when Bastian is riding the luck dragon at the very end, who doesn't want a luck dragon of your very own? So whereas, yeah, there seem to be a lot of weird images in this movie that as a child, like, ah, what is that? There's also like those great things like the freaking luck dragon that you cannot watch that without being filled with so much joy and funness and picturing yourself on its back, flying through the clouds, chasing the bullies through the alley. It's just so freaking fantastic the way this movie captures the imagination and in a sense turns each of us watching into Bastian. And so we are the human child now watching and being a part of this world and going on this journey with the characters. It's so deep. I love it. And then Gamork.
I am the servant of the power behind the nothing.
That dude used to freak me out all the time. From his first introduction, where it's all dark and then just the two green orbs and then the lightning flashing and you get the quick flashes of what his face is like. That used to freak me out as a kid. But then at the very end, when Atreyu wants to fight him.
Come for me, Gamork! I am Atreyu!
And so Atreyu invites the fight and the wolf jumps out to fight him, and it could be disappointing how quick the fight is, because there is no fight. It leaps at Atreyu and he stabs it, and Gamork is dead. Like, that's it. He is dead. But there didn't have to be anything else, because the conversation building up to that fight, more than the conversation, just sitting there staring at this wolf's face, watching its mouth moves as it talks, staring at his glowing green eyes and his disgusting teeth. And then that moment before he attacks where his eyes get wider and his teeth are... And then he leaps forward. You don't need anything else. That's it. All the tension and everything they needed to bring you right into that was right there. There didn't have to be that fight at all, and it's pretty epic that Atreyu killed that thing in one swift stab as Gamork came at him. In the end, I'm giving the NeverEnding Story an A+. I don't know how I couldn't. It's a childhood classic to me, even though it freaked me out as a kid. Even though I had a lot of crazy nightmares, probably because of this movie, I don't care. This movie engaged me as a child and the simplicity of its plot, and I felt like Bastian just joining everybody on the journey, and I loved this movie. And then as a grown-up to watch it and still be engaged and let all the nostalgia, like it hit the nostalgia switch and everything, but then it just drove me in that deeper level as a grown-up to watch it. I was like, oh my gosh. This movie really is good, and the graphics and effects work. They make it creepy. They make it look like it needs to look for what this movie is. It never needs to be updated. It never needs to be remade. This movie is perfect as it is. So what did you think of the NeverEnding Story? Did you watch it as a kid? Let's talk about that in the comments. While you're there, hit the subscribe button, become a Durbanian, and hit that bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next spoiler talk, or movie review, ranking video, theological analysis, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.